The rain fell like a curtain of cold steel across the empty highway, blurring the world into streaks of gray and silver, when a single, terrifying cry cut through the storm. It wasn't human. It was the deep, desperate sound of a German shepherd fighting for its life, echoing across the wet asphalt and into the dark sky. Headlights flickered in the distance, reflecting off a rusted transport truck where a group of masked men stood over a trembling pack leader, their raised weapon ready to end everything in a heartbeat. And hidden in the rain, moving like a shadow, a Navy SEAL saw it all. Before this story takes you deeper, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet heroes who step in when the world turns cruel. Your support keeps these stories alive. The man who saw everything was named Aaron Cole, a former Navy SEAL who had traded the noise of war for the silence of long highways. He was driving back from a failed construction job, his old pickup rattling against the storm, when something made him slow down. Maybe it was instinct, the same instinct that once kept him alive in firefights halfway across the world. Or maybe it was the sound, that raw, wounded growl, full of fear and defiance. Aaron pulled over just far enough to stay hidden, the rain soaking his jacket as he watched through the blur of falling water. The truck ahead of him looked like nothing special at first, just another worn transport with a canvas cover flapping in the wind. But when lightning flashed, it revealed a horrifying truth. Inside the open back were cages stacked on top of each other, each one holding a German shepherd. Their eyes were wide and terrified, their paws pressed against metal bars as if they were begging the sky for mercy. These weren't pets. These were working dogs, strong and trained, and they had been stolen and crammed into a mobile prison. Two men in dark rain suits stood at the back of the truck. One was holding the pack leader by a heavy collar, dragging him forward onto the slick road. The dog was massive, his fur soaked and matted, but his posture was proud. Even as fear shook his body, his eyes never lost their fire. He was protecting his pack, even now. The other man raised a thick wooden club, his arm trembling not with hesitation but with excitement, as if what he was about to do was something he had done many times before. Aaron's heart started pounding in his chest. He had seen cruelty in war, had seen what people could do when they thought no one was watching. But something about this was different. These animals didn't have a voice. They didn't have anyone to defend them. And right now, the only thing standing between them and a brutal end was a tired man in a rain-soaked jacket sitting in a rusted pickup. The traffickers were part of a dark underground trade that stole trained dogs and sold them to anyone who wanted a weapon with teeth. Dogs that resisted or tried to protect their pack were punished. And the pack leader was always the first to be broken, because once the leader fell, the rest would follow in fear. That was their method. That was their cruelty. The pack leader let out a low, rumbling growl as the men with the club stepped closer. The sound was not one of anger but of loyalty, of a protector who knew he was about to lose but refused to bow. The dogs in the cages whined and barked, some pawing at the bars so hard their pads began to bleed. They knew what was coming. They could feel it. Aaron's hands tightened around the steering wheel. His mind raced, calculating distance, numbers, and timing the way it always had. He was alone. They were armed. The rain was loud. But sometimes, chaos was the best cover. He stepped out of the truck and closed the door slowly, letting the rain soak him as he moved closer, keeping to the shadows. The traffickers were too focused on their victim to notice him at first. The men with the club raised it higher, his face hidden behind a hood, and brought it down toward the dog's skull. That was when Aaron moved. He didn't shout. He didn't hesitate. He sprinted forward, boots splashing through puddles as he slammed into the men holding the collar. The impact sent both of them crashing onto the wet road. The club flew from the other man's hand, skidding across the asphalt. The pack leader broke free, stumbling but not running, turning back toward his trapped pack with a desperate bark that sounded almost like a call to arms. The traffickers scrambled in shock. They hadn't expected anyone, especially not someone who moved like a trained soldier. One of them reached into his jacket, but Aaron was already there, knocking him back with a force that came from years of training and a heart full of anger. Rain blurred everything, turning the world into a chaotic storm of movement and noise. The pack leader stood between Aaron and the cages, his body shaking, not from fear but from adrenaline. Even hurt, even exhausted, he refused to leave his pack behind. That loyalty struck Aaron harder than any blow ever could. He had lost friends in war who had stood the same way, protecting others even when they were wounded. One trafficker managed to get back on his feet and ran toward the truck, trying to close the doors and trap the dogs inside. Aaron chased him, tackling him against the metal frame. The sound of steel rattling echoed through the rain. Inside, the dogs howled, their voices rising together like a choir of desperation. When it was finally over, when the traffickers lay unconscious on the road, the storm was still falling, but something had changed. The pack leader stood tall, his chest heaving, his eyes locked on Aaron. For a moment, they just stared at each other, two warriors from different worlds, connected by the same instinct to protect the innocent. Aaron moved slowly, not wanting to scare him. He knelt and held out a hand, palm open. The dog hesitated, then stepped forward, sniffing, his nose brushing Aaron's fingers. There was pain in his eyes, but there was also gratitude, something deep and unspoken. Together, Aaron and the pack leader went to the truck. The doors were jammed, but Aaron forced them open, one by one, until the cages were exposed. He didn't have the keys, so he used the crowbar from his truck, bending and breaking the locks until every door swung wide. One by one, the dogs stepped out, cautious at first, then faster as they realized they were free. They gathered around their leader, touching noses, pressing close. It was a moment so pure and powerful that Aaron felt something in his chest crack open. These dogs had been treated like property, like cargo, but here they were, a family reunited in the middle of a storm. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone else must have seen the fight or the stopped truck. Aaron knew help was coming, and for the first time in a long while, he felt relief instead of dread. The dogs were safe now. At least, for the moment. Animal control and police arrived soon after, their vehicles lighting up the wet road with flashes of red and blue. The traffickers were arrested, dragged away in handcuffs as they shouted and cursed. The dogs were carefully loaded into clean transport vans, given blankets and water. The pack leader never left Aaron's side, walking so close that their shoulders almost touched. News of what happened spread quickly. A former Navy SEAL stopping a trafficking operation in the middle of a storm sounded like something out of a movie, but for Aaron, it was just another night where he followed his instincts. He didn't see himself as a hero. He just saw a wrong that needed to be made right. The pack leader, now nicknamed Storm by the rescue workers because of where he was saved, was taken to a rehabilitation center with the rest of his pack. They were treated for injuries, given food and care, and slowly began to trust humans again. But Storm never stopped looking toward the door, waiting for the men who had stepped out of the rain to save him. Weeks later, Aaron visited the center. The moment Storm saw him, he ran forward, his tail wagging so hard it shook his entire body. The bond they had formed on that dark highway hadn't faded. It had grown. Aaron had lost so much in his life. Friends, purpose, a sense of home. But standing there with Storm pressed against his leg, he realized something new was beginning. Sometimes, the ones you save end up saving you too. Storm was eventually adopted, not by a wealthy buyer or a security firm, but by Aaron himself. They went on long walks, trained together, and healed together. The pack was placed with loving families, their days of cages and fear finally behind them. The stormy night on that highway became a memory, but its impact lasted forever. A group of dogs got their freedom. A man found a new reason to keep going. And somewhere in the world, kindness had proven stronger than cruelty. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment now to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps spread stories of hope, courage, and second chances to people who need them most. And before this story ends, I ask you one special thing. Please comment below with a single word that describes how this story made you feel. It means more than you know. Because every time someone listens, every time someone cares, another light is lit in a world that can sometimes feel very dark. And on a rain-soaked highway, a Navy SEAL and a brave dog once proved that even in the worst storms, heroes still rise.